Bojo, hello, and welcome back to the Fashioning Resurgence panel series, co-presented by Indigenous Fashion Week Toronto and the School of Fashion at Ryerson University. My name is Riley Kutrin, and I'm an assistant professor at the School of Fashion, coming at you from Bigtigong Nishnabeg Aki. We are live today. Some of these panels have been pre-recorded, so if you're with us, you can ask questions on Facebook and YouTube. Land-based fashion, a leading fashion framework, is one of the final panel topics, which is perhaps fitting, because I think at the heart of Indigenous fashion is land. And today we're hoping to unpack what that means and how Indigenous designers can embody the values that come with being in relation to land. So I'm going to ask everyone to introduce themselves and ask, who are you wearing or what are you wearing? Because I am seeing some stunning earrings. How about Amber? Let's toss it over to you.
Honey, my name is Amber Sandy. I am from Neashinaningming First Nation or Cape Croker. I work for Ryerson University in the Faculty of Sciences Outreach Office, and I do Indigenous Knowledge and Science Outreach. I'm an artist, and I am currently wearing some Carrie Allison beaded tobacco leaf earrings and my Leslie Hampton t-shirt.
Love it. Tanya, how about you?
Angwinzi, Shoji Tanya Larson Oji. I'm a Gwich'in artist who is residing in Yellowknife. I'm currently wearing my own beadwork in my jewelry, and I'm wearing some moccasins my auntie gave me. So,
I mean, you got to represent. Your number one biggest fan, Aletheia.
Hi, I'm Aletheia Alnakoparel, and I'm an Inuk filmmaker based in Iqaluit, and I'm wearing Creations for Continuity beaded and porcupine quill earrings.
Beautiful. Bobby?
Hi, I'm Bobby Ita. I am in Utqiagvik, Alaska. I was born and raised here. I am Inuba, and I'm wearing Sly Cloud Morrison earrings, and then my tikalik is made by me.
Awesome. Miigwech, everyone. So as you can see, we are being joined by some incredible artists, designers, filmmakers from across Turtle Island. So I'm wondering, given where you are right now, what does land mean to you? What does the land look like? What does land mean to you? Tanya, can we go to you first?
yeah, I think land for me is that feeling whenever you actually go out on the land and you're walking on soft moss during the spring and you're looking for rotten woods, and you put your hands in the dirt. Or it's also that feeling when you're walking on the snow and you can just hear the crisp of each step you take and breathing in that fresh air and feeling at home.
That's beautiful. I'm instantly being transported to the land with you. And maybe also what are the materials that you are using? So for you, is it caribou? What are those materials that you're working with from the land?
Well, I incorporate the land by using materials that I create that is from the land. So I usually will use animal parts that are from remains of subsistence hunting. So usually it comes from hunters who've, have been feeding their family and their community. So I will be using hide that I tan, meaning that I'm also getting rotten wood to smoke it, to soften it, and to make it into a hide. I also use materials such as, porcupine quills, caribou hair. Actually, some of my caribou hair comes from where Aletheia is from. It was from our friend Karen Kabluna, who had put caribou outside to dry in the ice in the sun, and Raven got to it, and so she had this like caribou hide that was like destroyed by Raven, so she gifted it to me, and we did a trade from there. So those are different elements that I use.
Awesome, miigwech. Aletheia, how about you?
When I think of the land, I think of food. And I mean, the land is it's where our lives come from, our food and the materials that we work with for our clothing and everything. We belong to it and we have a responsibility for it. And it gives us life. And the materials that are used around here, I'm not a fashion designer myself. I've made a couple of films that, talk about materials and the importance of land and animals that are used in fashion. But around here we use seal skin and bone, antler, ivory, you name it. My kid just came in. Say hi. Hi. Okay, go see Tata. Go see Tata. Yeah, ivory and antler and teeth, skulls, you name it. Everything's used. Everything's used.
Sounds like a party is happening. It's Sunday morning at Aletheia's house.
Quite a minute ago. I'm gonna mute now.
Bobby, how about you?
So thinking about land, I feel like I'm so connected to it, everything that we do. And I mean, when I think of land, I think of, going to the cabin, going hunting. Like we're so up here, like we survive off the land. We have to go out and provide for our families, off the land, hunting for whales and seals and caribou, because the cost of groceries, it gets so expensive, and it saves us more money to go and hunt for ourselves and for other people. And to me, I just feel so connected to the land, especially when I'm out there. Even if I just go to the beach, me and my daughter, this summer we went to the beach so many times, and it's just, I feel, I don't know, at home when I'm on the land.
And so what kinds of materials do you work with in your designs?
So I use a lot of seal skin. A lot of seals washed up this summer. So I was able to, we had a big storm and it was really strange. We had about 30 seals wash up on the ocean, on the beach. And so I was able to get my younger brother and have him go help me get some of the seals to see if I could save the skins, because these seals had already been, um, dead on the beach for maybe a couple days. And I think that a lot of them were like sunken seals that people shot and then they just got washed up. So I use seal skin a lot. What else would I use? Sometimes I'll use baleen from the bowhead whale to make jewelry. What else? Yeah, I think like sealskin is one of the main things, because up here we have in Alaska, so we don't have a commercial tannery. We don't do commercial sealing here. So everything, if I try to, if someone has a seal and they don't know what to do with the skin, sometimes they'll offer to give it to me, or I'll ask them, can I buy it from you if they went out hunting and it's fresh. But yeah, I really the main thing that I like to look for is seal skin.
So it's sounding like everything is so interconnected between food and fashion. It all is just one. And I love how, you're already hinting at the kind of relations that you need to create a fashion. It's calling up your friend, calling up a family member, and this like beautiful exchange that's happening.
Yes.
Amber, how about you?
The land means a lot to me. I currently live in Sudbury, but I've recently moved up here. And for a long time, I've lived in Toronto. And so I spent a lot of time traveling to communities up here, more northern communities, or just spending time on the land. And it's meant so much to me because it's taught me a lot about the work that I do in Indigenous knowledge and science. But I also really recognize that land can be in an urban place. And so I guess I'll focus a little bit more on that because that's kind of the perspective I can bring to this group. Living in Toronto, you definitely are at a loss and sort of a lack of land space, especially when you live in a small apartment. A lot of us never had, yards or that kind of thing. So land sometimes was like your small little patio that you have, or a tiny little park that you could go to close by, or somewhere where you knew, there's specific medicines growing that you knew you could actually go harvest in an area that's urban and accessible. And for me, I have been working a lot with hides. So I first started learning how to tan deer hides, and I've been working with moose hides now, and furs and fish skins, which has been like kind of my most recent obsession, and it's a lot of fun. One of the things that sort of connects me back to land and even like food has been sourcing those fish skins to learn how to make fish leather. And while living in Toronto, it's a little hard, we don't really go out fishing for our dinner that often. So I started building relationships with local sushi restaurants and getting some extra skins from them, because they're typically just tossed in the garbage at the end of the day. So, utilizing those materials and things that are typically thrown out has been really important in my work.
Amazing. I wonder if anyone else has any comments on urban land base. I think we're jumping ahead in our order of questions, but I think that is, an important point to discuss, that embodying these values that are in land-based fashion is entirely possible in urban settings. And it sounds like, urban is not homogenous. There's lots of, different areas. So if you do have a backyard, you might be better positioned, or if you have that park that's nearby, or in Toronto, there's lots of rivers and ravines that we might have access to. Tanya, what about, you've done some work in the city of Yellowknife, correct?
Yes, with our group Denenao, we created an urban high tanning program. So we've done it, I'm like, how many years have we done it for? We pretty much reclaiming the city park at the city center. And we've been, because it was known, like the city of Yellowknife, to be a great hunting spot and also a great berry picking spot. And so we wanted to showcase, you know, because this was like a camping area. And so we created a space where people could actually come and learn how to tan hides or see, you know, come and ask us questions or participate. And because oftentimes whenever we want to learn how to tan hides, you actually have to go to communities, go on the land. And for some people, that was a huge investment. And so we want to be able to bring that to them. And it was very successful, especially with children. Like the schools would bring their classes, and you know, from the first year to the third or fourth year, like we would have repeat students come by, and by the, you know, the third visit, they're like, I know how to do this. Like, I'll show you how to flesh a moose hide. And it was just so great to see that that was going to be their normal. And that's something that is completely natural to see a hide being tanned.
And that like reclaiming of space, I think, is so powerful that, you know, we have been removed from the land that became these urban centers, but we are reclaiming. Sorry, maybe Amber, back to you. Do you see that in, you know, I'm reminded of that time we did tanning in the quad at Ryerson. And it's so powerful to turn a corner in a city and you get hit by that smell or you see smoke. What's that like to be doing tanning in an urban place?
Yeah, it's really powerful. It's so amazing. And it's almost hard to describe the feeling that you get from being able to bring something like this to an urban setting to reclaim that space and also provide that opportunity to other urban Indigenous people who don't have, you know, the chance to go up to their home communities or go spend time on the land. Who just are really invested and want to learn. It's really beautiful to sort of bring that community together. And that's kind of where social media has been a really big help too, is connecting with people and groups like Dene Naho. Their urban hide camp is such an inspiration. And Mila, who is one of the people who works with them as well, helped really guide us in the direction of how to set up the camp, gave some really solid pointers on, you know, how you can mitigate those situations of non-Indigenous people coming up to a camp and wanting to ask questions. And for our purposes at Ryerson at SciExchange, we wanted to make this event about Indigenous knowledge and science. And we host it for a week during Science Literacy Week. So we're sort of showcasing how amazing Indigenous science is. And of course, we want people to come ask questions and like learn about it. But we ended up putting together a booth of volunteers and having Ryerson students sort of man that booth, where people could go up and ask questions and learn about some of the science behind hide tanning. And it really stopped it from becoming more of a spectacle, but something that people could come and actually learn about, while at the same time, hide tanners and participants actually had the space to be able to learn and continue doing this. So it's really important work, and I'm sad we couldn't do it this year, but we did do a smaller version camp that we have filmed. So we'll have like a little virtual hide camp that we'll be sharing hopefully in this next month on our website. And I can't wait till we can all get together and do it again in an urban setting. But it's really neat. One of the things that we got to do too was take our hides to soak in a river overnight. So one of the days we had to leave and go to Humber River to soak the hides overnight. And it was such a cool experience being in this urban park near the water. And as the next day we were going to pick up our hides, a family of deer came down as we were picking up those hides. So it was really kind of this moment of like, you underestimate how much nature you actually have access to in urban spaces. And that was like a really neat reminder for us.
So beautiful. Someone's telling you you're doing something right. Aletheia, Bobby, any thoughts on these? Maybe not on urban tanning, but have you been teachers? Have you had this experience of sharing?
I just love the, I definitely don't live in an urban space, but I've gone to school in cities, and I love going to sushi restaurants and getting fish skin. That's just so freaking native to to find something that would otherwise be waste and make use of it. It's what we do in our communities, whether small or in urban centers. So I just love that. There's an artist, Taqalik Dafi, who her company's called Ugly Fish Designs, and she collects she makes jewelry out of materials that are found. So lots of people hunt and use the bones or fur or whatever, and she chooses to make her collections entirely out of found bones and ivory and all those things, and or people send her things that they found. So that can happen in cities, and it can happen in rural areas too. And either way, no matter where the materials are coming from, to make use of something that would otherwise be waste is a principle that I think is shared by a lot of different Indigenous communities.
Bobby?
So I think it's really cool that you guys are doing, hide tanning classes. That's something here. What we need. I only know one other Indigenous artist that lives here she's teaching, or she taught herself how to tan seal skin, like, home tan. But other than that, we lost our tradition of tanning. And so we have to find outside sources to send our seal hides to get tanned. So it's really awesome that you guys are hosting classes like that. And I would like to be a part of something like that. That's really cool.
I think that's a complete possibility with this shift, social media, shift to online. I think do you see that resurgence happening? Do you see, more interest in building out that kind of infrastructure for tanning?
Yeah, I think there's quite a bit of interest here. I think a lot of us, a lot of people that I know, we want to learn how to do it ourselves instead of outsourcing. I had to send all my seal hides that I harvested this summer. I had to send them to San Francisco. So I had to ship them instead of tan them myself. And then the product that came out, I know if I would have home tanned it, I tried to home tan 2 of my seal hides, but they were rock hard. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I felt like I was going to mess up. But the tannery I used was able to save those hides and tan them professionally. But I would love to learn how to, and I know a lot of other people that would love to learn how as well.
And an enormous expense to ship that all the way to San Francisco from Alaska, and the time required. So interesting. Aletheia, did you have a thought there?
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate because there used to be commercial tanneries both in Alaska and in Nunavut, and when the sealskin bans went into place both in Europe and in the United States, that's what basically shut down our tanneries. So I mean, there's traditional tanning, and then there's the the chemical commercial tanning, and both are valid things that we should have access to, but it was really settler environmental and animal rights movements that shut down access to those kinds of things for us. And it's a problem that occurs across the fashion industry. I mean, all Indigenous peoples have been affected by those kinds of movements on the fur trade and sealskin especially, but it's an ongoing issue because those pieces of legislation still exist, And then on top of that, it's like it's spreading. So now ivory has been banned in the United States, which, you know, the ban was, ivory ban was aimed at elephant poaching, right? But of course, Inuit, we eat walrus and we eat narwhal, and ivory doesn't only come from elephants. So as usual, we're kind of like a footnote in the conversation. We're just kind of forgotten about, and legislation is created. You know, they say not targeting us, but, you know, even when people know that we're affected, it's like, you know, we're not important enough, I guess, to be considered in those kinds of legislation. So it's an issue across the native fashion industry. I think we've all been affected by legislation that is made by people who say that they're caring about animals and the environment, but they're worst affecting the people who are closest to the land and working with materials that keep us connected to those animal populations, and therefore trying to protect them as well.
And so Angry Inuk came out in 2016, and you said that those policies still exist. I'm wondering, has anything changed since you made that film? Maybe has consumer perception started to change? Any thoughts?
I think that it's changed within Canada, at least. Like within Canada, we're allowed to sell sealskin commercially. It's more difficult leaving Canada, but I think the uptake for sealskin products within our country, at least, has gone way up, and there's been kind of resurgence of interest in sealskin as a material from younger designers. I mean, we've always used sealskin. It's, you know, we always wear it at home, but the pride in wearing sealskin when traveling outside of our community is, I think it's been affected in a positive way. The legislation in Europe and in the United States are still there. But, you know, there are ongoing efforts that I hope will play out eventually, because I think we have to confront these things, because, you know, first it was sealskin, and then now it's polar bear and narwhal and walrus, and no matter what, all of our animals seem to be treated like these majestic, untouchable creatures to Southerners who don't have these animals in their backyard. Like all of the Arctic is kind of used as like poster child for whatever issues down south. So it's an ongoing issue that needs to be addressed, really. Otherwise, what are our artists going to use? You know, we have to be able to use the things around us. Otherwise, we're importing plastic and and so on.
But so yeah, a little hopeful that at least domestically, Canadian consumers' perceptions might be shifting, more support. For sure, I could imagine how this Indigenous fashion movement that is so, you know, political and land-based might support with that changing perception. I'm wondering about the role of community broadly, because I think Indigenous fashion, it's never just about one designer. It taps into whole families, whole communities. So Tanya, maybe if I could throw it over to you, how does Indigenous fashion support entire communities?
Well, for me, I always thought that, you know, you can work by yourself or you can involve people around you. And I find that it's way more beneficial for yourself, the whole community, the whole experience to work with other people, whether it's building capacity or, you know, creating employment, especially up north, especially if you are from a smaller community or a flying community. And what I always loved about Indigenous fashion is there is naturally a like already a system in place within a community. Like I see it happening like naturally, where you know that one person who's really good at like drawing uppers, for example. You know someone who's really good at doing embroidery, someone who's really good at beading, someone who's really good at like cutting your footprint and like doing perfect seams. So if you think about it in an you know, commercial sense, like you already have a production line in the community. And so for me, my dream is to be able to like utilize that, to be able to utilize the like working with indigenous makers and creators who have like used their skill and refined them for decades. And like oftentimes I saw people feeling not good, like having low self-esteem, because each time they're trying to sell their artwork, people are constantly trying to bring down their prices, are, you know, don't say nice things in person. And so I think that we already have these production lines in our community, and my dream would be for it to be utilized in a way that I love e-commerce, so I'm like utilizing that in that sense.
Bobby or Amber, do you see parallels in the communities that you work with?
Yeah, and like as I was listening to Tanya speak, I was even just thinking of how social media has impacted us in our community work like this. So for me, you know, completing a pair of earrings, I might have purchased beads from Running Fox Beads, and then I might get some home tanned hide from Culture Bead, and just purchasing from these indigenous communities who are putting in that work to, you know, create access for home tanned hide and also pay the families that are doing that work, and to build their own shops and that kind of thing. Like that incorporates community as well, and how many people are either dyeing caribou hair or just spending that time dedicating themselves to certain things that we can then all utilize in our own work has been really, really neat as well.
Yeah, so community to me up here. So when it comes to creating things, like I learned how to make the seal gut material for rain parkas. You know, I had to find an artist that knew how to do that, and with my aunt, and then my mom was involved in learning too. And like one of my main sources is always my brother. You know, he's like our main provider for us up here, and so asking him, do you know where to get this? And then just coming together and working together and working as a community to, you know, and exactly finding who I can go to and be like, can I get this material? Do you have this available? And yeah, it's really community based when you're making items. And it's really awesome because it's like you're something that you made, you know, not only comes from, you know, you making it, but it's also you're supporting other people as well. And I love that. You know, I'm all about like supporting other artists. If I don't have a certain material, then I can reach out to them and support them.
And so it's sounding like any community might have all of the tools already, whether that's an actual, you know, nation community, or even in an urban community where you can rely on social media to find each other in urban places. I guess I'm just wondering right now, after listening to all of you, like, how do we convince people, you know, that every community could have a fashion industry, that, you know, everyone could potentially use e-commerce? Any thoughts there on how do we? Yeah, Amber, jump in.
Kind of what Tanya was saying about capacity building. I think that's a huge thing, and providing opportunity for people to learn from knowledge holders and to, you know, be able to go out and learn how to bead, learn like that entrepreneur thing that Tanya can probably speak to. But those kinds of opportunities that we're seeing now for our communities are are what are really going to change the game here, because, you know, there's a few people who are really, really good at social media or creating websites or that kind of thing. And the more we share that with our community members, the more opportunity we're going to provide for people to be able to like make this their livelihood and actually benefit from it as well.
Tanya, any thoughts? I see your like gears turning.
Yeah, I think it's important to, in terms of building capacity, like it's not only like it's also creating relationships and like when I say creating relationship is I always think about how residential school and colonialism did such a good work at breaking all the relationships within a family, within a community. And for me, learning how to tan hides and learning how to sew was not only about the physical aspect of it, of learning, but it was like learning to ask questions to my elders, learning to be able to talk to hunters, learning, you know, to actually talk with other people who are in the same situation as me. And it was really about reconnecting those relationships and feeling strong within a community of people. And so that is so essential. And so when we talk about the land, like you can't survive on the land by yourself. You always had people around you that, you know, if you mess up, like someone's going to be there to be like, you messed up, but let's, you know, keep walking. Let's keep learning. Let's keep going on this path. And so it's really about people first. It's really about, you know, getting to know yourself and honoring our traditions and like seeing how precious and sacred those are and viewing our people as the most important resource. So really putting the land and people first.
Aletheia or Bobby, do you see that relationship building happening in your communities?
Definitely. I mean, it's right from the hunters, you know, when you buy, you know, you made art, you're basically supporting a whole chain of people, a whole community. So, you know, hunters' skills are kept up by continuing to hunt. Then the meat is eaten by multiple families. Like you're not just buying a pair of earrings or a pair of boots or whatever. It's feeding people not just through the money that was made, but by the animal that was hunted. And then there's a whole skill set that comes with that of how to process those skins, even how to butcher an animal well so that you maximize the use of the skin and maximize the use of the meat. And then there's language skills that are kept up by being out on the land. You know, younger hunters, keeping people hunting keeps people on the land and knowing the land and place names and you know, there's a whole world of culture that's retained by buying and supporting Indigenous artists. So it's not just about the one person. It's shared skills, and then on top of all that, an expression of culture and who we are. So my baby keeps coming in right when I'm talking. Yeah, so I mean it's never ending. And then when you hello, when you buy art made by Indigenous people, it's like it's encouraging the next generation to keep learning those same skills as well. So it's on and ongoing.
So adorable. I love that there's actually 6 people on this panel today. Bobby, how about you? Are you seeing, you know, those relationships forming? How do you continue to nurture those relationships?
The community relationships. So in our community, we always work together, and we like are always preparing year round. And when I need something, like my brother always knows, once it's a certain season, he's like, I got you a seal. You want it? During the summertime. And I'm like, yeah, you can bring it over here. And then he brought me so many seals this summer. I can pretty much butcher them on my own all the way. And so when I first, he hadn't gone seal hunting, and maybe like in a couple of years, we met, like he didn't go out boating for a couple of years because our boats were down. So he would go hunting with other people, but he wouldn't bring the catch home because usually the catch belongs to the boat, whoever owns the boat, and then they'll give you shares of it. So he was really happy to have a working boat this summer, and he was just like, as soon as he got home, there would be days he'd be out there. And of course, he would have to recruit. He needed other people to come along with him to go boating, for safety and whatever else they need to do to look out for the seals and stuff. And so it's not only, him, but it's also him inviting his other friends to go out and hunt. And yeah, it's totally a community thing, and just encouraging those to other people to go out and, harvest things. And if you know someone that hunts a certain animal, or if they have extras, or if they have, if they have enough of materials, then they'll give them to whoever needs them. And thank goodness for like Facebook and social media. They'll post and be like, who needs this or who needs that, or they'll reach out and they'll be like, do you need a seal hide? I don't know what to do with it. And I'll tell them, maybe I can come over and I can show you how to, get it ready for the tannery, the next process. Cause a lot of people up here, they don't know what to do, the next steps, how to prepare it and get it ready for the tannery. So usually they reach out. So it's definitely a community thing, that we all work together.
So I think I'm hearing that we're already doing these things. It's our way of life, and perhaps just presenting it in another light, that it is fashion. Perhaps it is like a luxury fashion that deserves high price points. It's just taking what we're doing but shifting it for new audiences, and now we can do that with social media, with e-commerce. I was definitely on I guess a more personal level. I was definitely hearing you, Tanya, when you were talking about learning how to communicate, with those people. And I think for me, as someone who didn't grow up in my community, I do have like second cousins or third cousins who do these skills, but I might not have those relations. And I think I need to do some work on just how to communicate. And I feel like as a queer person, sometimes I feel this animosity, this tension with a hunter or something like that. And I think it's just, we do need to learn how to communicate with one another. And I think that's so important. Earlier, we mentioned entrepreneur, Tanya, and I'm wondering if you could talk about what that is and how this might connect to getting more people on the land doing land-based fashion.
Yeah, Entrepreneurs is a program I was a part of 3 years ago. And it was, the first cohort was about land-based products. So it was about learning really how to run your business. And we had, most of the cohort had online presence through their websites. And this year I came back to the program as a mentor. So for the fashion program, I'm part of the program as a mentor. And it's been really great because it's that thing about when we're talking about building capacities, like I learned my lessons, you make mistakes sometimes, but there's so much learning that went through, and able to be giving back to the community of entrepreneurs who are part of this program. And sometimes like realized I was scared that I was too young to be a mentor. And then I was like thinking about it in the context of things. And I was like, like if you look at our chiefs who like sign treaties, or like our chiefs who sign self-governments and stuff like that, sometimes they were really young. And so it's not that Western idea of who should be a mentor, like the old white guy with the white hair, but really it's like the people who are, who can give back, who can share the knowledge. So yeah, it's quite exciting because I truly believe that our stories as Indigenous creators is so important to share in a different light. I truly value my culture, and I think that our elders are so rich in knowledge. And whenever I get to tell a story, it's really not just my story, but it's all the people who've taught me. And so it's really bringing your whole community with you. And I get to share that through social media, by sharing experiences, by sharing processes, and showing how much work really goes into creating fashion from land-based material, and how important it is to support artists and be able to pay them a fair wage so that you can create not only impact for yourself, but for a whole community.
And you mentioned sharing, and we've been talking a lot about this throughout this panel series. And I'm wondering if anyone had any thoughts on what does get shared and what stays in community. There have been people who've thought, only community, keep this in community. There have been others who want to share to a point where you can share appreciation, but you wouldn't want to share so that a non-Indigenous person could take up this practice and start selling. How do you navigate that tension of what do you share with the outside world and what do you keep in your community?
It's such a fine line for me, and I realized I got really burnt out using social media to share, because in our Indigenous values there's always reciprocity. And I realized a lot of people were taking the knowledge that I was sharing, but nothing was coming back to, replenish my own bowl kind of thing. And so it was a lot of, I felt empty after a while. And I always make sure that if you're sharing pictures, you ask the person you're taking a picture of. If you're sharing a process, you ask if you can share that. But also what's important is when you're sharing teachings and stuff like that, to always share where it comes from, so that the person who's learning from that knows that it comes from an Indigenous person, knows that it comes from a community, knows the place and the people it comes from. Because we don't want to create, a pan-Indigenous trends. We have very specific styles in each of our region, and we want to make sure that even though we can share it through social media, if you're trying to copy someone else's style, you have to remember that this is a specific cultural indicator from a specific region. And that's what I expect people to know when I'm sharing my work. And so, yeah, it's definitely a learning experience. And sometimes you don't realize the impact you have by sharing. So I think it's still beneficial because so many people don't have access, like to community or to land or to knowledge holders. But you also have to be cautious of the impact it can have in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with that. And I think that's important about that relationship with knowledge holders. And when I first wanted to learn how to tan hides, it's not a process of like, Google searching and watching a video online to learn. It was like years of waiting until I found a knowledge holder who could help me. And instead of me saying, can you teach me how to do this? And can I take this? It was like, can I come help you with your work and spend this time? And that will be an ongoing relationship that I will upkeep forever, for the rest of my life. And I think that those teachings are really, really important when it comes to this. I definitely share a lot over social media, including like my fish skin tanning. And for me, that has been, it's filled my cup a little bit to see so many people picking up this thing and creating art from it. It's been so amazing to see that. But I'm not sharing anything that's like traditional knowledge. I'm not sharing something that I have learned like from an elder in a sense that I would feel uncomfortable sharing that. And hide tanning is one of those really amazing things that has happened all around the world. Different cultures and communities all around the world have tanned hides in different ways. And so it's kind of one of those beautiful things that when you start learning about, you can see the different techniques people would use. And for me, it's really brought together a big community of people who are Indigenous and non-Indigenous. And even when it comes to hide tanning, I remember listening to a panel, I think 2 days ago that Mila was on, and she mentioned how there's non-Indigenous hide tanning instructors. And, you know, when you're learning that, you're learning the skill, like just the technique. You're not learning any of the culture behind it and that kind of thing. And that's so true. I mean, I think there's value there for people who want to learn that skill, especially people who are non-Indigenous, who hunt and they want to actually utilize the things that they're taking from the earth. And in my mind, you know, the more all of us are connected to what we're taking from the land, what we're eating, all of that kind of stuff, the better we're all going to be off for that, because those relationships and those connections are just so important and integral to us having a better understanding of how we can be better in relation to this land.
That's so true. So many people eat sushi, but how many of us are using the skins from those fish and ensuring they don't end up in a landfill? Any thoughts, Aletheia or Bobby, on this? I guess we're hearing about this difference between learning a technique and the stories and the culture and the values behind that technique.
Yeah, so in my community, we all have kind of like our own patterns for our parkas, mukluks, our hats, mittens. And for me, I only share kind of like my basic pattern. But if it's anything further, like I have a certain design for my parkas that was handed down, like my mom designed for me, and it's like a really specific style, and you know that it's mine, like that I wouldn't give to someone else unless they were family. Like I would only pass it down to my daughter. And then like the trim designs we do on our parkas, they're called kubuks, but everyone has their own specific design, which tells you who the designer is of the style of a parka, or the mukluks. You can always tell who designed it. So it's I'm all about sharing, but if it I don't mind sharing like basic patterns, like a beginner pattern, but my more advanced ones, it took me so many years to actually critique and get an item to be that good. It's really hard for me to give, that. And it's like really sacred to me because it took so many hours and trial and error just to make one pattern, because usually our patterns, you can't get them in the store. And so, but I do teach online. I teach traditional atikluk making, sometimes rough making, and I'm always really happy. I had one student that she was a seamstress and she lives in the city. She lives in Anchorage, and she was one of my students this past week. And I was like, I had sent all the patterns to all my students. I had like 12 or 13, but only ended up with 2. But I was so proud of this lady because I had worked with her at Alaska Federation of Natives. It's this big convention where we sell Native arts and crafts, and her looks that she would make, they were pretty good. They were okay, but helping her achieve to get to another level just made me so happy to teach her and show her, like, this is how you really make it, you know, get it to look really professional, and then you can up your price. And it just made me, like, I don't know, it brought me a lot of happiness to be able to share that with her and teach her those different techniques. And I know she was really happy too and super excited. So it was really awesome. And also, you know, the whole thing on mentoring, like, even though, so I'm 35, I had my first student maybe 5 to 10 years ago. And she's like my mom's age. And I taught her how to make traditional fur parkas. And she's like, it's like I was teaching someone way older than me, but it's just, you know, if you have the knowledge, it's really good to, you know, it's awesome to share that. And I didn't think I could be a teacher at the time. I was so young. And she was just like, I love your work. I really want to make one for my daughter. And I was like, okay, I can teach you how. Just come over. And she would help watch my kids. And then I would be working on stuff for her. And then she'd go home and sew. And she like did awesome on a really big project, which I was really proud of.
Yeah, I was having a lot of the same thoughts, and you just said them all. Yeah, it's so important with sewing patterns, and it's such a personal thing. It's such a gift, and when someone gives you a pattern, that has to be appreciated, because those patterns are sometimes they've been developed over generations to be a certain way. And for someone to gift their pattern to you is it's huge. So you can't just like go around and give it to a whole bunch of other people, right? You have to ask the person who gave it to you if it's okay to share it with someone else. You start to work with your own patterns over time, and you know, alter things, and it eventually, the more you make a parka, for example, and you make changes every time, it eventually becomes your own, and then you have the right to share it with who you please, right? But there's been so much disconnect in our communities due to colonization that a lot of people who want to sew, to make fashion, don't have access to their family patterns anymore. And so it's just such a beautiful, touching thing when someone sees someone with the skills and the patterns gifts that to somebody who's lost those connections, and it's like rebuilding those things. It's such an incredibly touching thing that I think is actively happening. That when someone becomes like a master sewer, that they see people really trying to learn and work hard at it, and to give them their patterns is an incredible honor. So it's wonderful to see that happen.
And so I think that definitely speaks to the importance of intellectual property, which is another big topic that we've been skirting around in this panel series. To not let someone else take that pattern, to not let a company take that pattern, because from a mainstream, you know, capitalist business perspective, it is just that it's property, and they can replicate a pattern. And so it's so important to make sure those remain in families, in communities. And I was just reminded, Christy Belcourt in our Q&A the other day talked about how, you know, she hopes that Indigenous designers just go forth with the mentality that, you know, things might get taken, and to just have that awareness of, you know, when you put something out in the world, it might get taken. And it reminds me of a teaching an elder shared with me, is like, once you have an idea and you share that idea, it's not yours anymore. It's out there in the world. You can't control it. So just have that awareness that there are people out there who are looking for these designs, looking for these patterns, looking to exploit them. So when you have that awareness, that might help mitigate some of that damage that the fashion industry can do. We're approaching our time remaining. Any final thoughts, final questions that you might have? What do you hope for the future of land-based fashion? Any advice for young Indigenous fashion designers? Final thoughts, who wants to jump in?
I was just gonna keep going on your thought, but that will be my final thought. Is like, as we talk about building community and sharing and being inspired by one another and stuff like that, I think it's so important. It's a practice that we do, like that I learned in art school, but it's also important. Like whenever you are inspired by someone and it helps you create something, say their names. It's okay to be like, my teacher was this, or I was inspired by this person's work, because that's what it means to build community. That's what it means. It means you're carrying on someone's legacy by saying their words. And whether they're with us in this world or not, they will always be alive because their work has transcended through your body. Or even if they're still today, that's a way of honoring someone. And not if you're stealing like straight up, which some companies have done, but within our community, we can support each other in that way. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and my final thought would just be kind of on that whole train of recognizing where your knowledge comes from. When it comes to teaching and talking about Indigenous knowledge and science, a lot of what we talk about are our stories. And for me, when I'm sharing that, it's so important that we know what community those stories come from, who told that story, because that gives context. You know, the knowledge that I have from my own community is so different from the knowledge that Riley has from his community, because the topography is totally different. The plants are totally different. The ecology is completely different. So it's really important, you know, to carry that through in both that work, science work, but also in fashion and design.
Bobby or Aletheia, final words?
Sure. I guess just, you know, I think there's been a huge resurgence of land-based fashion. I think Instagram's been amazing for it. My Instagram is so different from my Twitter and my Facebook. I basically almost only follow Native designers. And it's so wonderful to see the incredible work happening, a resurgence of really beautiful skills that, you know, fast fashion is like, there's nothing in fast fashion that could come close to the Indigenous work that I'm seeing online right now. It's incredible. And, you know, that these pieces, everything I see on Instagram is like, it could be a family heirloom. It's just incredible to see the cultural values and morals come through in this incredibly beautiful work that carries forward culture and language and Indigenous ideas of beauty and all of that. So it's really inspiring to see all of that happening online. I'm loving it. It's funny to like, on one hand, it's kind of like anti-capitalist, it's slow fashion, but then at the same time, I'm like, I want to buy everything. I feel so conflicted.
And my final thoughts are to all the young people out there that are into land-based fashion is to keep on learning. You know, it takes a long time to perfect, you know, your patterns and techniques. Don't give up.
Miigwech for tuning in to Land-Based Fashion, a leading fashion framework, and Gichi Miigwech to our incredible guests. Thank you so much for joining us. My heart is full.
Koyunakpa.
Merci.
Miigwech.